Chapter 975, Startling a Heavenly Body Tier Cultivator. Chapter 975, Startling a Heavenly Body Tier Cultivator. This slash was incredibly dazzling, and even the sun in the sky appeared dull in comparison. This wasn't a great elite of the sun-moon tier, but instead a great elite of the heavenly body tier. Ling Han's first reaction was to hide into the Black Tower. This wasn't a question of courage. Even though his physique was already on par with level 2 godly metal, it was still doubtless that he would turn into dust if he was struck by this slash. Wang. Right at this moment, however, a golden staff instantly descended from the sky and appeared before him. Streaks of divine patterns lit up on the staff, forming a golden zone that protected both him and Shui Yenyu and Hu Feiyun, who were standing behind him. Ding! The sword light slashed into the staff, sending up a long streak of sparks. Boom! A terrifying shock wave slid past the two sides and roof of the golden zone. These were streaks of sword patterns, and their vicious sharpness caused even the space to become unstable. It was as if space were going to tear apart. You dare attempt to kill my people before me? What courage! A mighty figure appeared before Ling Han and firmly grabbed the staff. A domineering aura was radiated from his body. He was Ding Lian, one of the 7 generals of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire. He had a burly figure, and wore a crimson armor that was etched full of divine patterns. It was evidently a god tool. His black hair billowed in the air, and coupled with the golden staff in his hand, he appeared like an invincible god of war. One man guarded the pass, and even 10,000 wouldn't be able to break through. The most renowned battle of this elite was when he charged into the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire by himself and killed a traitor in the imperial capital of the enemy. In the end, he managed to successfully break back out and return to the Chaotic Star's Majestic Empire. Of course, he also paid a huge price for it, and almost lost his life. He only recovered from his wounds after recuperating for several hundred years. According to rumors, he still suffered from the side effects, or else he might have already broken through to the medium extreme of the heavenly body tier. What a heavy accusation, great general. He's merely a cultivator at the mountain river tier, and this king has already killed countless such cultivators. It's as simple as flicking my fingers. A middle-aged male slowly walked out. His skin was white, even a little transparent. King and Lan, do you want to battle against me? Ding Lian raised his staff and pointed it toward the middle-aged male. His fighting spirit soared, and the image of a star formed behind his back, exuding a might that desired to suppress the sky. If the target of his staff had been an ordinary person, perhaps their entire body would have already exploded. However, the middle-aged male whom he referred to as King and Lan was completely unaffected. He was a crowned king of the Jade Drop Majestic Empire, and not only was he powerful, but his status was also extremely lofty. Thus, he naturally wasn't afraid of Ding Lian. This king wants the life of this brat, he said softly. He must die today. Ling Han chuckled coldly, and said, Dare I ask, King and Lan, where I have offended you? He originally didn't have the right to converse with elites of the heavenly body tier. However, this person was trying to kill him, so why would he care about such formalities? A look of disdain flashed across King and Lan's face. A mere ant of the mountain river tier actually dared to stand while speaking to him? What gall! He didn't reply, and merely stared at Ding Lian. Ding Lian's expression was cold. You think I don't know that this little buddy reached the Crimson Lake Island 3 times? Are you afraid that he'll become a huge threat to the Jade Drop Majestic Empire in the future? Haha. So what if that's the case? King and Lan didn't refute this claim. At their tier, it was beneath them to lie through their teeth. He laughed, and said, however, this brat merely has some potential. Even if he can realize it, that's still a matter for at least tens of thousands of years later. Great General Ding, what's the point of protecting him? Well then, why is King and Lan so anxious to kill him? Ding Lian rebutted. Great General Ding, I've heard that you secretly have a crush on the Empress. Aren't you afraid that this prodigy is going to attract her attention, and perhaps even... Hee. King and Lan suddenly changed the topic. This was also Ding Lian's weakness. He was deep in love with the Empress of the Chaotic Star's Majestic Empire, and this was a secret that was known by almost everyone. However, his status was too lofty and his strength was too powerful, and the other person was more so the empress of the chaotic star's majestic empire. As a result, not many dared to raise this matter. Now that King Enlan publicly spoke of this matter, Ding Lian's expression instantly became dark. A petrifying killing intent seeped out from his body. The empress was his weakness, and she was also his reverse scale one. She was more so a holy figure who couldn't be violated. King Enlan, are you seeking death? Ding Lian was simmering with killing intent. He loved the empress of the chaotic star's majestic empire deeply, yet he was too ashamed of himself to pursue her. He believed that not a single male in the world was worthy of being with the empress. Now, however, someone actually dared to disrespect the empress. This made him seethe with rage. King Enlan's heart jolted. He hadn't envisioned that he would fail to drive a wedge between them, and instead would end up enraging Ding Lian. What an absolute backfire. This general also thinks that this brat is an eyesore. I also want to end his life. Another voice sounded, and a white-robed male suddenly appeared beside Ding Lian and King Enlan. His face was jade-like, and he possessed a rarely seen beauty. However, his amorous eyes were far too lustful, and it was clear that he was someone who had tangled with many women. Qi Feng. Ding Lian said in a deep voice. Qi Feng was a great general of the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire. His status was equivalent to Ding Lian's, and his strength was also similar to Ding Lian's. When Ding Lian had charged into the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire, he was the main elite who had pursued him. It was a pity that Ding Lian had succeeded in fleeing back to the chaotic star's majestic empire, however, and this was something that continued to weigh on his mind. It could be said that they were old enemies. However, the three majestic empires hadn't gone to war for a long time, and thus they also hadn't been able to battle each other for a long time. Ding Lian, hand that brat over. Otherwise, I won't mind teaming up with King Enlan, Qi Feng threatened sinisterly. Ling Han was astonished. He had merely reached the island 3 times, and now even elites of the heavenly body tier wanted to slay him on the spot. We've truly drawn too much attention this time, Shui Yenyu whispered. After reaching the island twice, Zhao Lun also met with the threat of death when he left. However, he had already shot to fame at that time, so in addition to Great General Shuo Jing, he also had Great General Zhao Jianbai protecting him in secret. It was thanks to them that the Eternity Sky and Jade Drop majestic empires weren't able to kill him. There was an anxious look on her face. Who would have imagined that Ling Han would be so freakish and reach the Crimson Lake Island 3 times? This was several times more freakish than Zhao Lun, and it would be strange if the other 2 majestic empires didn't try to kill him. However, there was only one great general here in Ding Lian. How could he possibly block 2 great elites of the heavenly body tier? King Enlan sneered coldly as he wrapped his arms before his chest. Meanwhile, Ding Lian appeared to be in a wild state, and he brandished his staff for a moment before resting it onto his shoulder. You too can try. However, I'm warning you, if one of you tries to battle me while the other attempts to kill him, don't blame me for being merciless. These youths that you brought over, none of them will survive. King Enlan and Great General Qi Feng's expressions changed drastically when they heard this. Meanwhile, the youths from the 2 other majestic empires also trembled in fear. These words were uttered by an elite of the heavenly body tier, so who would dare to treat it as an empty threat? Ding Lian, let this general test which stage you've cultivated your Northern Desert Crimson Sun technique to. Qi Feng raised his fists as he spoke. He looked like a frail scholar, yet his expertise was none other than fist techniques. He was renowned for his ferocious close-quarter combat. This king would also like to have a taste of General Ding's supreme staff techniques. King Enlan brandished his sword and released boundless divine might. Chapter 976, Intent Realm of Invincibility. Chapter 976, Intent Realm of Invincibility. Ding Lian was brimming with fighting spirit as he ferociously charged toward King Enlan and Qi Feng. Dazzling golden light soared into the sky as he swiped with his staff, and it was as if he were about to shake the stars off from the sky. Fortunately, this wasn't a small world. Every star was potentially as big as the joint peace planet, and they were all situated tremendously far away from here. If they could truly be shaken from the sky, then wouldn't the joint peace planet have already been destroyed countless times? Anyhow, the might of an elite at the heavenly body tier was still formidable. Once Ding Lian entered into action, the entire desolate plain tremored, and the vast stretch of land started to crack and fracture. The land was completely unable to withstand the might of a heavenly body tier cultivator. Everyone hurriedly retreated. Even elites at the sun-moon tier would be killed if they were caught up in this strike, let alone them, cultivators who were only at the mountain river tier. Moreover, they were only at the low extreme of the mountain river tier, and such a strike could obliterate them in the blink of an eye. King Enlan and Qi Feng moved together, and their fist and sword both struck toward Ding Lian's golden staff. Pang! A huge force instantly exploded outward when the fist and sword collided with the staff, and the zone that they were in was instantly enveloped by gold, white, and black light. A shock wave spread outward, and even those who had already retreated far into the distance were still violently shaken. 90% of people there started to vomit blood. When the light disappeared, everyone could see that Ding Lian still remained in his attacking posture. Meanwhile, King Enlan's sword and Qi Feng's fist also remained on the body of his staff. It was as if they had turned into stone statues. Let us fight in the sky to our heart's content. The three people soared into the sky, and immediately commenced an intense battle. Only elites at the heavenly body tier could wield the regulations of the immortal realm and fly through the skies. This time, their might climbed explosively, reaching a level more than 100 times stronger than before. It was evident that they had been worried about accidentally obliterating their own forces just then. Thus, they had all held back significantly. Boom! Bursts of light and shock waves ripped through the sky, and even the radiance of the sun became veiled and dim. Almost everyone was knocked off their feet, and only a measly few people could remain standing. Ling Han could only just see the battle between the three elites after activating his Eye of Truth. Their speed was incredible, and they continuously charged and slid past each other. Their actions far exceeded the limits of a mountain river tier cultivator's sight. Ding Lian walked a path of dominance, and every strike from his staff was direct and without fussing. At his tier, there was already not much need for techniques anyway. He was almost one with his staff arts, and the Tao of heaven and earth would naturally be imbued in all of his strikes. As a result, his attacks were all extremely terrifying. However, he had two equally powerful opponents, with both Qi Feng and King Enlan also being at the peak stage of the low extreme of the heavenly body tier. In fact, they were both 4-star geniuses as well, and neither of them was weaker than Ding Lian. Right now, Ding Lian was still evenly matched with them. However, how long could he last? Ling Han couldn't help but feel anxious. Once Ding Lian was defeated, the two elites would definitely turn their attention to him. Am I an easy target now? Ling Han was extremely pissed. However, he had no option but to admit that he was indeed an easy target right now. He was born in a small world, and he had only just advanced to the mountain river tier as well. So what if he was a 5 or 6-star genius? Any force here could bully him. My strength is far from sufficient. Ling Han's mind whirred. He had 8 mountain river stones right now, which was enough to help him to the peak stage of the low extreme. Moreover, since there were treasures such as mountain river stones in this world, there were likely other similar treasures that could also rapidly raise one's cultivation level. He needed to advance to the medium extreme, high extreme, and consummate level as soon as possible, and then break through to the sun-moon tier. Only after reaching the sun-moon tier would he not be an easy target for others. After all, there were only so many cultivators at the heavenly body tier in the joint peace planet. At that time, he would be able to leave the joint peace planet and search for the Rock Palace, the Heaven's Sword Palace, as well as the other forces. Peng! 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 As he mulled over this, the battle in the sky had already become increasingly intense, and arrived at a crescendo. King Enlan and Qi Feng started to unleash their might, and both released a powerful god tool. King Enlan unleashed a treasure bottle that hovered above his head and poured down wisps of mystical energy. This was Tianyi mystical energy, and each wisp was as heavy as a mountain and incredibly resilient against attacks. They formed an extremely powerful defensive barrier around his body. Meanwhile, Qi Feng had retrieved a treasure mirror that spat out a column of light from time to time. It possessed a formidable destructive power, and with a single strike, even lofty mountains would be instantly razed to the ground. Ding Lian also had a god tool. The golden staff he was wielding was forged from high-level godly metal and also etched with the martial intent of his entire lifetime. It was almost one with his body, and each strike that he performed could flawlessly unleash his power. Coupled with the boost from god tools, his battle prowess was relatively frightening. However, he was battling against two people, after all, and each one of them was capable of fighting him alone. One harassed him while the other attacked, and this put huge pressure on Ding Lian. Fortunately, the armor he wore was also a god tool. Its divine patterns lit up and formed a light barrier that would prevent him from being wounded unless it was shattered. The problem was, this barrier barely lasted for a moment under the frenzied attacks from the two elites, and it pretty much shattered after a few strikes. After a short while, Ding Lian's body had already become riddled with many new wounds. How much longer could he last? Great General Ding, what's the point? He's merely a weakling of the mountain river tier. King and Lan didn't want to push him into a corner. Wounding his opponent was one matter, but trying to kill him was a completely different matter. If such an elite unleashed their full strength, they would definitely be able to drag one of them down with him. Even if they didn't die, they would still suffer unrecoverable wounds. Ding Lian wore a cold expression as he stood drenched in blood. Most of the blood was his, but some of it was also from King and Lan and Qi Feng. His black hair billowed in the air, and he appeared much like a demon god. He roared with laughter, and said, "Speak after you defeat me." His staff techniques suddenly changed, unexpectedly becoming extremely slow. Yi! He! Serious expressions appeared on King and Lan and Qi Feng's faces. In fact, there was even a hint of nervousness. This is the intent realm of the Supreme Staff Technique's 9th form, Qi Feng exclaimed. He was an old rival of Ding Lian, thus he was naturally extremely familiar with his staff techniques. The Supreme Staff Technique had a total of 9 forms, yet these were not specific techniques. Instead, they were 9 different kinds of intent realms, each being extremely flexible and capable of a myriad of changes. This was common among god-level techniques. They taught one how to channel power and utilize regulations rather than teaching one how to use set strikes or techniques. For example, the ultimate arrow was a technique that taught one how to maximize the might of their shot. Regarding the Supreme Staff Technique, each form was more powerful than its predecessor. The 9th form was more so rumored to be invincible. Of course, the label invincible was clearly an exaggeration. However, since it could be labeled as an intent realm of invincibility, this staff technique was definitely extremely powerful. Ding Lian hadn't been able to master this intent realm even though he had spent 1,000,000 years practicing it. But what about now? This intent realm could raise his battle prowess by 1/3 of a star, or perhaps even half a star. He was already a 4-star genius, thus elevating his battle prowess by even 1/10 would be extremely terrifying, let alone a full half-star. King and Lan and Qi Feng both cursed their misfortune in their minds. How are we so unfortunate? Chapter 977 Abandoning Killing Intent. Chapter 977 Abandoning Killing Intent. Ding Lian had definitely only mastered this 9th form just then, as the intent realm that he displayed was extremely crude. Couldn't you have mastered this later? King and Lan and Qi Feng both grumbled in their minds. At their tier, it was already extremely difficult to raise their strength anymore. They had all been stuck at the heavenly body tier for tens of thousands of years, thus they had already tempered their cultivation level to an extremely sturdy state. It was immensely difficult to raise their power by even a tiny amount. However, if they could become even a tiny bit stronger, it would be enough for them to enjoy an advantage when facing off against powerful enemies. Ding Lian smiled proudly, and said, "Eat my staff." He raised his staff, and was just about to strike down. However, streaks of golden light gathered as he raised his staff, and they surprisingly formed into a circle of 36 Ding Lian. They encircled King and Lan and Qi Feng, and like a group of golden war Buddhas, they all raised their staffs in unison. King Enlan and Qifeng didn't dare underestimate these Ding Linians, and they both raised their battle prowess to the extreme. Their opponent had managed to take another small step beyond his limit, and this caused a sense of trepidation to well up in their hearts. Boom! The 36 Ding Lians attacked in unison. Peng, 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 peng. The sky once again became a swirl of brilliant colors, making the entire heaven and earth appear dim in comparison. The brilliant colors were too dazzling, and as such, the contrast was too stark. When the brilliant colors disappeared, everyone could see the blood seeping from the corners of King Enlan and Qifeng's mouths. It was clear that they had been wounded. Pu. Ding Lian also spat out a mouthful of blood. However, the blood was gold, and it immediately started to combust when it exited his mouth. It burned into thin air before it could even reach the ground. Ha ha ha. Meanwhile, Qifeng was roaring with laughter. Ding Lian, you haven't truly mastered the 9th form of the Supreme Staff technique yet. You only forcefully activated it by combusting your own blood essence. You're fighting with your life. How many times can you unleash such a technique? Ding Lian stood proudly in the air, his fighting spirit soaring as his black hair billowed behind his back. He appeared extremely confident, and he said, "Rest assured, it's definitely enough to kill you." Qifeng's domineering aura was outdone, and he involuntarily humphed. He genuinely wanted to kill Ling Han and rid themselves of a future threat. However, he definitely wouldn't persist if this meant receiving severe wounds or perhaps even sacrificing his life. Ding Lian showed that he had the determination to battle to the death, yet Qifeng lacked this kind of firm resolution. Thus, it was very likely that he would lose if they continued to fight. King Enlan also frowned. He hadn't expected that Ding Lian would be willing to sacrifice his life for a cultivator of the mountain river tier. It was said that Ding Lian was the most loyal to the Empress of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire out of the 7 generals. By the looks of it, this was not false. The Empress had tasked him with escorting and protecting these cultivators, so he did so without cutting any corners at all. In fact, he was even willing to sacrifice his life to complete this task. An elite of the heavenly body tier is actually this foolishly loyal? King Enlan had never seen the Empress of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire before, and he had only heard of her great renown. She was lauded as the greatest beauty of the world, and even the emperors and kings of the other 2 majestic empires were enchanted by her beauty. Curiosity involuntarily welled up in his heart, and he suddenly felt a strong desire to meet this empress, who was surprisingly able to elicit such a stubborn loyalty from Ding Lian. Qifeng's mind had already been thrown into disarray, and he also didn't have the resolve to battle to the death. As such, there was no need for this battle to continue. King Enlan smiled faintly, and said, "Since Great General Ding is so determined, I'll give you some face. This brat. I won't try to kill him anymore." In any case, Ling Han was only at the low extreme of the mountain river tier right now, and he was still eons away from reaching the heavenly body tier. There would be numerous chances to kill him in the future. Qifeng remained silent. He was extremely unhappy about his aura being suppressed by his mortal enemy. Ding Lian chuckled coldly as he rested his staff on his shoulder, completely ignoring King Enlan's words. Face was earned, not given. However, we can spare him, but it should be fine if the youths test their mettle against each other, no? King Enlan's tone suddenly changed, and it was clear that he still hadn't abandoned the thought of killing Ling Han. No problem. Ding Lian answered without hesitation. He waved a hand, and said, "I won't interfere if their cultivation level is the same or if their age is the same. If Ling Han lost under such conditions, then such trash didn't deserve pity even if they died." The 3 elites descended back onto the ground. King Enlan wore a sinister smile as he asked, "Which of you is going to battle against that prodigy from the Chaotic Star's majestic empire? I'll accept whoever can kill that human as my disciple." Qifeng directly offered a valuable reward. At this moment, no one dared to accept. Numerous people had witnessed Ling Han's abilities at the Crimson Lake. In their minds, he was a complete freak. He was completely unscathed even after falling into the corrosive Crimson Lake. Who could defeat such a formidable defense? Moreover, him reaching the island 3 times spoke volumes about his abilities. The gravity fields of the floating stones didn't change according to one's cultivation level. Rather, they remained the same for everyone. So, what did Ling Han reaching the island 3 times signify, then? It signified that his power and physique were above any other person's at the low extreme. Winning honor and glory for one's own majestic empire was undoubtedly desirable. However, what if they lost? Under the watchful gazes of so many people, it would be a complete and utter humiliation. King Enlan and Qi Feng's expressions involuntarily darkened. No one dared to challenge Ling Han, and this result brought them great embarrassment. What? Blockhead is so impressive now. He's so impressive that no one dares to challenge him. Li Weiwei was both astonished and excited. Even when Zhao Lun had been shooting to fame, there was still an occasional prodigy or two from the other 2 majestic empires who would come to challenge him. However, Ling Han was so powerful that no one dared challenge him. This was definitely a historical feat. Tang Feng involuntarily clenched his fists in jealousy and hatred. He swore that he would challenge Ling Han when he got back, and he swore that he would knock Ling Han off his divine altar. Bunch of trash. Qi Feng angrily waved his hand. Fuck off back to the ship. The cultivators from the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire all hurried back to their warship with their tails between their legs. Who told them to lack the courage to challenge Ling Han? King Enlan sighed, and also ordered his cultivators back to the ship. The 2 elites both looked at Ling Han deeply before issuing commands to return to their respective majestic empires. They decided to let the matter slide this time. At any rate, Ling Han was still a long way off from reaching the heavenly body tier, and they could always employ the services of the Dark Knight Hall in the future. How hard could it be to kill a cultivator of the Mountain River tier? Let's return. Ding Lian also waved everyone onto the ship. After everyone boarded, he immediately entered a cabin. His face instantly became gold, and he heavily kneeled onto the floor as cold sweat rushed down his face. How could he not pay a price for facing 2 elites alone? Moreover, he had even forcefully activated the 9th form of his Supreme Staff technique at the end. This placed a tremendous burden on him, and he had only forcefully retained his composure in order to deter King Enlan and Qi Feng. Otherwise, how would the 2 of them give up so easily? The warship quickly entered the Chaotic Star's Majestic Empire's territory, and Ding Lian was finally able to heal his wounds by drawing upon the power of the nation. This calmed him down greatly. Right now, he wouldn't be afraid even if the 2 elites came to their senses and turned around to give chase. He could utilize the power of the nation, and this would raise his battle prowess by another 1 star. As a result, he would be able to easily suppress the other 2 elites. After arriving at the imperial capital, everyone scattered to return to their own clans and sects. However, everyone cast an extra glance toward Ling Han before they left. This prodigy would soar without limits, yet without a firm backstage, such geniuses were prone to dying on their path to glory. Chapter 978, To the Library Again. Chapter 978, To the Library Again. When those who had entered the Heavenly Sea Mystery Realm returned, a shocking piece of news spread, instantly shaking the whole imperial capital. Someone had crossed the Crimson Lake Island 3 times, but to the majority, they completely did not know what that meant. Was that very awesome? Immediately, someone told them, "Do you know Zhao Lun?" In the past, even Zhao Lun managed to reach the island twice, and he was already the first in 1,000 years. With such a comparison, everyone had some idea. Who was Zhao Lun? He was a real genius that everyone thought highly of, certain that he could advance into heavenly body tier in future. Moreover, it was possible that such a genius only appeared once every million years. Now, there was another one that was even greater than Zhao Lun. Who exactly is this Ling Han? You still don't know? He came from a small world. What? Someone from a small world could also be that awesome? You think you can deceive me just because I haven't studied much? I am not someone that has not seen a cultivator that has ascended from a small world. In the Shattering Void tier, they would only have battle prowess of 15 stars at most, and are practically trash. That's your fault for being ill-informed and ignorant. This person is the emperor of a small world that has come through opening the sky. Hiss. If the fact that Linghan represented the chaotic star's majestic empire and won the first place in the competition between the three nations caused his reputation to rise, then now, his name really rung out through the whole imperial capital, and became known to all the forces in the city. If he could mature, this man could very possibly become an ultimate elite of the heavenly body tier in the future. Of course, the heavenly body tier was too difficult to reach. Firstly, doing so required a great amount of time, and secondly, required an extremely large amount of resources. If there wasn't a powerful force to support him, this perhaps would remain only a possibility. Some Sun-Moon tier forces had already decided to make Linghan their son-in-law. As long as Linghan nodded, they would nurture him with all their resources in hand, and in the future, their own clan would naturally become a clan with a heavenly body tier elite, and become an influential force on the joint peace planet. But there were also some forces that revealed killing intent towards Linghan, for example, the Luo clan. They would definitely not allow Linghan to mature and reach his full potential. Amidst these turbulent waves in the darkness, Linghan returned to the academy. The first thing he did was inform the academy beforehand that he was planning to attempt breaking through into the mountain river tier. Presently, he had only raised his cultivation level with the aid of mountain river stones, and lacked personal comprehension. He would only be limited to the peak stage of the low extreme, and could not possibly advance further than that. He had to cultivate an immortal level cultivation technique to truly become an immortal. The academy attached great importance to this matter, and deliberately sent out a well-experienced elder to safeguard his Tao. Firstly, he naturally had to learn an immortal level cultivation technique. Without the experience of a predecessor, and he had to invent his own cultivation technique, and that was definitely not a matter of 8 or 10 years, but an extensive project that would take a few hundred to a few thousand years of time. Cultivation techniques of the low extreme were gifted by the academy, but from the medium extreme onwards, cultivation techniques had to be redeemed through academic credits. However, because Linghan had reached the Crimson Lake Island 3 times, the higher-ups of the Northern Institution were naturally very pleased, and hence rewarded him with 1,000 academic credits. One had to understand that an ordinary student of the low extreme would not be able to earn so many academic credits even in 10 years. This was very, very generous. The cultivation technique that he was cultivating now was called 7-Star Secrets, a very ordinary cultivation technique. Every student could obtain this cultivation technique from the academy after they had reached the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier. Since it was free, it was naturally impossible that it would be any high-grade item. After all, there was nothing so nice like reaping a harvest when no seeds were sown. The person safeguarding his Tao was responsible for explaining cultivation techniques, and Linghan could ask him for guidance if there was anything he did not understand. An ordinary student would have 3 days to ask for guidance, but Linghan had 7. This naturally was proof of the generous fondness of the higher-ups of the Northern Institution. However, Linghan merely used 1 day to ask for guidance, and on the 2nd day, he began to achieve enlightenment in seclusion. Firstly, his comprehension ability was indeed amazing, and secondly, he was already standing in the low extreme, so if he turned back to achieve enlightenment of his cultivation on this level, the difficulty was naturally considerably lesser than it was for others. After all, the difficulty was in teaching you how to achieve enlightenment regarding the regulations of the heavens and earth to form your mountain river. Now that his mountain river had already taken form, he had skipped the most difficult step. Linghan drew out a flame mountain river stone, and as he comprehended the secrets of the mountain river tier, he continued to refine it. In this manner, he would be able to attain a more visible and physical comprehension. After this mountain river stone was refined, he had also advanced into the peak stage of the low extreme. He did not stop, but rather continued to refine mountain river stones, wanting to charge up to the maximum limit of the low extreme in a single go. He had made a miscalculation. 4 mountain river stones were completely insufficient to raise his cultivation level to the maximum of the low extreme. The resources required for every step forward would also be double the last. After he had refined 4 flame mountain river stones, he discovered a problem. He had not reached the maximum of the low extreme, but no more divine patterns could be emblazoned on the large mountain. In his Dantianth maximum limit was 9. If I refine any more special mountain river stones, that would only be pure waste. I can only continue to do so after I have advanced into the medium extreme and formed the second mountain river. Ling Han drew out an ordinary mountain river stone and began refining. This would only increase his cultivation level, but did not possess any special effects. Hence, this was not a waste. Lam at least 3 mountain river stones away from reaching the maximum of the low extreme. Ling Han shook his head. He had not imagined that the distance would be so wide, because the early stage of the low extreme only needed a single mountain river stone. However, at least, I am now truly a mountain river tier cultivator. He smiled. After 4 days, he had finally comprehended the secrets of mountain river tier, and become a genuine immortal who had potential to continue advancing. In his Dantian, the first mountain river had also been magnified by about 100-fold, and was no longer smaller than other mountain rivers. I have just learnt the 7-star secrets, and it is going to expire soon. I will need a new cultivation technique. Otherwise, I would not be able to break through to the medium extreme. This is not something that mountain river stones can help with. Ling Han shook his head. The grade of the cultivation technique directly decided the speed and pace of cultivation. Hence, he had to save up enough academic credits to redeem an awesome cultivation technique. After he came out of seclusion, he made a report to the academy that he would be leaving the Shattering Void tier division in future, and officially step into the low extreme division. Because the academy attached great importance to him, they had long since made the arrangements for him. After he came out of seclusion, his new proof of identity was already waiting for him. Thus, Ling Han went to the library. Firstly, he had to look around for a cultivation technique for the medium extreme. Even if he did not have any academic credits to redeem it, he had to find out what the price was first, right? Secondly, he also wanted to pay a visit to Old Man Shu. He had gotten an awesome technique from him, and he had yet to thank him properly for it. He strolled, and very quickly, arrived at the library. Everything was just as it had been. Old Man Shu was seated at the entrance, looking like he was about to nod off. "Greetings, senior." Ling Han walked over, and greeted him respectfully. "You're back?" Old Man Shu asked casually without opening his eyes. "I'm back," Ling Han answered with a nod. "Go on." Old Man Shu waved him off. Ling Han nodded again. He pressed a hand on the stone plaque at the entrance, and obtained a new level of permission. He could now ascend to the 2nd floor. He went to the 2nd floor. The bookshelves here were double the number on the 1st floor. However, their contents were not books in the traditional meaning of the word, but rather multiple bone plaques. Some were even complete bones. There were also some pieces of godly metal that were covered with divine patterns, exuding an ancient air. Chapter 979 Universal 8 Desolation Technique. Chapter 979 Universal 8 Desolation Technique. There were restrictions set up outside these shelves as protection. If one stretched his hand out, an introduction to the secret techniques within would be displayed. For example, whether they were cultivation techniques or martial arts techniques, what grade they were, of what elemental alignment they were, and so on. More importantly, you'd also know how many academic credits was needed to redeem them. If you had enough academic credits, then you could immediately spend your academic credits to dissolve the restriction to read through them. Furthermore, you would be allowed to undergo comprehension here for 10 days. However, if you still wanted to continue comprehension after the 10 days, you would have to spend academic credits again, though the amount would be halved. This would also give one enough motivation to make as much use of time as possible. Even though immortals could easily have 100,000s to millions of years of life, having reached this level, one should know that if he wanted to ascend to a high peak, there really never was enough time no matter how much there was. Ling Han merely read the introduction. He should at least have some idea before he could decide which cultivation technique he would choose to cultivate. Many of the cultivation techniques here were very cheap, and only needed a few dozen academic credits. However, there were also expensive ones, like the Black Thunder Ground River Secrets. It actually needed 5,000 academic credits, which dumbfounded Ling Han. Who could afford to redeem it? But when he thought that an ordinary student would have to stay over 5,000 years in the low extreme division as he calculated, 5,000 academic credits was really not that much. Moreover, the Black Thunder Ground River Secrets was not the most expensive cultivation technique. There were some that cost more than 10,000. In the Immortal Realm, cultivation techniques were divided into a total of 10 levels, with level 1 as the lowest, and level 10 as the highest. For example, the 7-star secrets that Ling Han had learnt before was one of the lowest grade level 1 cultivation technique. Moreover, even if you were given the complete 7-star secrets, you could only cultivate to consummate level of the Mountain River tier at most. Here, the highest level cultivation technique was level 4. Meanwhile, according to Shui Yenyu, the inherited cultivation technique of the Shui clan, Moon-Shattering Secrets was level 5. Unfortunately, no matter how outrageously bold Shui Yenyu was, she would not dare to teach him the cultivation technique secretly. If she did, both she and Ling Han would be dead. To any clan or sect, the cultivation technique was the most important inheritance, and would definitely not be passed on easily. This is good, that is good too, just that they are all so expensive. Ling Han sighed repeatedly. At first, he had thought that he could go on a spending spree with the 1,000 academic credits that he had gotten as a reward from the academy. Only after he had gone through the shelves did he realize how poor he was. I can first redeem a low-level cultivation technique, and break through to the medium extreme. Then, I can save up slowly to redeem a higher-level cultivation technique. Ling Han made his decision, but did not immediately proceed to redeem any. He came down from upstairs, and just when he was about to leave, he saw Old Man Shu had opened his eyes, and said to him, "Young man, walk with this old man." This old man actually opened his mouth and offered him an invitation. Ling Han could not help but feel overwhelmed by the favor he was shown, and said, "Please, senior." Old Man Shu stood up, and walked ahead, minding his own business. Ling Han, meanwhile, followed behind, maintaining a respectful attitude. The Scarlet Heaven Academy was incredibly huge, and there were dense forests and gardens everywhere on the academy grounds. The two of them arrived at the bank of a lake. Light was reflected off the rippling waves, looking like a mad dance of thousands of golden snakes. "I heard about your performance in the Heavenly Sea Mystery Realm." Old Man Shu turned to look back at Ling Han with a smile, and said, "Very good." "Thank you for your compliment, senior," Ling Han replied modestly. Old Man Shu laughed, stroked his beard, and said, "Have you chosen any cultivation technique just now?" "To tell the truth, senior, this junior has indeed chosen a few cultivation techniques. Unfortunately, I am embarrassingly short on funds, and do not have nearly enough to redeem any of them," Ling Han answered with a shake of his head. Old Man Shu said, "I do have a cultivation technique that I can teach you. However, I want you to agree to a condition." "What condition?" Ling Han asked. "In the future, if you encounter the highest Jade Essence Heart, you must retrieve it for me at all cost." Old Man Shu's eyes lit up, a strange image of suns, moons, and stars started shining in his eyes. His whole person seemed to be exuding a supreme air of dominance. At this moment, he was no longer an old man. If it wasn't for the fact that his hair was still white, and his face was covered with wrinkles, anyone would think that he was a stalwart, strong man of 7 feet. Ling Han was at a loss. He asked, "What is the highest Jade Essence Heart? If you encounter it, you will naturally find out." Old Man Shu only exhibited a bit of his might, and his aura immediately ebbed away like the tide, with him turning back into a decrepit old man. He waved a hand dismissively, and said, "Your present cultivation level is still too low, so even if you think about it, it will come to nothing." "How completely frank, do you not think that will be a blow to my ego? Does senior not worry that I will not try my best?" Ling Han asked. After all, he had only asked him to try his very best to retrieve it in a situation when he encountered it, but did not ask him to search for it with all his might. This and that were two very different stories. Old Man Shu laughed loudly, and said, "Then I would have misjudged you." Ling Han nodded. "Then, please teach me, senior. This cultivation technique is called the Universal 8 Desolation Technique, but all I got was an incomplete scroll. I could only cultivate to the consummate level of the Heavenly Body tier. As for after that, it would be up to you to think of a way," Old Man Shu said. This cultivation technique sounded awesome. Universal 8 Desolation Technique, so he would be the sole supreme existence. Dare I ask what grade this cultivation technique is at? Ling Han questioned. Old Man Shu thought for a moment, and then, with a shake of his head, said, I am not sure about that, either. However, as far as I know, in terms of rate of advancement, and in terms of the quality of origin power cultivated from this technique, it would definitely not be inferior to anyone on the Joint Peace Planet. These words were a bit boastful. The whole Joint Peace Planet. Then wouldn't that include the 3 majestic empires as well? He drew out a piece of jade, tossing it over to Ling Han, and said, the cultivation technique is recorded on this. Comprehend it on your own, and if there is anything that you do not understand, you can come and ask me. Thank you, Senior. Ling Han solemnly put the jade away. This favor was overwhelmingly huge. If it was really as what Old Man Shu had said, that the grade of the Universal 8 Desolation Technique was not inferior to that of any existing cultivation technique on the Joint Peace Planet, then he needed only send it to be auctioned, and this would lead to a frenzied snatching from everyone. After all, a treasure like the Mountain River Stone could only nurture a few geniuses, but a supreme cultivation technique could increase the overall level of a faction, and the effect would last generations. Ling Han did not make any empty boasts, but merely promised in his heart that if he discovered the location of the highest Jade Essence Heart, he would try his utter best to retrieve it. He switched to new accommodations. The students of the Low Extreme Division could not possibly stay together with the Shattering Void Tier Division. After Ling Han moved into his new quarters, he did not give anyone prior notice. Instead, he immediately began to cultivate in seclusion. He currently had 2 missions: recultivate the Universal 8 Desolation Technique and improve his body art to the immortal level. Meanwhile, some things happened during his seclusion. Tang Feng very publicly issued a challenge towards Ling Han. Now that the 2 of them were students of the Low Extreme Division of the Northern Institution, this was a battle between equals. However, because he was ranked at the high position that was the first place, yet he still turned back to challenge Ling Han, it was slightly unreasonable. But who asked Ling Han to be so well known now? Everyone in the Low Extreme would be proud of defeating him, and wanted to ascend up the ranks by stepping on his head. Furthermore, if Tang Feng did not beat Ling Han, others would think that his prized position in the first place was more in name than in fact. Aside from that, Zhao Lun had also successfully broken through to the consummate level of Mountain River Tier, and according to rumors, had cultivated an ancient technique, which had incredibly frightening power. He was bestowed the rank of a 7th rank military officer by the Empress. His name was engraved onto the nation's totem, so he could make use of power of the nation. All of a sudden, his fame suppressed Ling Han's. Chapter 980 Medium Extreme. Chapter 980 Medium Extreme. Now, everyone in the imperial capital was very expectant. When would Ling Han be able to catch up to Zhao Lun in cultivation level, and thus lead to an ultimate match between an older genius and a newer genius? Due to that, the underground casinos had already laid out the stakes, betting on the time left before the first battle between Ling Han and Zhao Lun would explode. 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and there were even 10 years to 100 years. The closer the time, the higher the stakes were. Though it was possible that this bet would only be realized in a few dozen years or even a few hundred years, there was still a considerable number of bettors. Luo clan residents. Luo Hongdao's face was ashen. For the sake of this trip into the Heavenly Sea Mystery Realm, the clan had paid an extremely heavy price just to attain 4 entry slots. But after those 4 had entered, they did not come back out again. Most importantly, the Crimson Ground locking net was lost as well. The price paid for attaining those 4 entry slots compared with the price of creating the Crimson Ground locking net was on completely 2 different levels. Even though the Crimson Ground locking net was only effective on living beings of the Mountain River tier, this type of god tool had always been rare, and was incredibly valuable. For it, even the Luo clan had suffered serious injury, and sacrificed a colossal part of their wealth. What is going on here? 4 of them went in, bringing the Crimson Ground locking net with them, so how could it be that not even one of them came back out? He exclaimed, slamming a hand on the table, appearing to be incredibly furious. In reply to Lord Patriarch, someone has seen that Ling Han was also inside that flame cave. Luo Qing answered. He was also an important pillar of support for the Luo clan with his cultivation level in the low extreme of the Sun Moon tier. Luo Hongdao's eyes froze over. Now, whenever he heard this name, he would feel an unnamed rage. He humphed and said, "Are you telling me that it was that ant from a small world that has killed Luo Jian and the others?" Lord Patriarch, that Ling Han is a 4-star genius. Furthermore, with the help of mountain river stones, his cultivation level has also reached the late stage or even the peak stage of the low extreme. His battle prowess should not be underestimated. Luo Qing exclaimed in full honesty. Luo Hongdao shook his head and said, Luo Jian and the others had brought the Crimson Ground locking net which could weaken their opponent by a minor level with them, so how much battle prowess could that ant show? At most, his battle prowess would only be in the peak stage of the low extreme, so how could he possibly be a match for Luo Jian and the others? Luo Qing could not answer, either. This comparison of abilities was really too clear. The leader, Luo Xiang, was at the peak stage of the low extreme in the first place, and his battle prowess had even surpassed 4 stars. Fighting a Ling Han that had been trapped by the Crimson Ground locking net would surely end with a one-sided victory. Unless, the God tool did not take effect, but how could that be possible? Oh, right. News came from the Dark Knight Hall's side that the first attempt to assassinate Ling Han had failed, and now that Ling Han's cultivation level increased, they said they would have to raise the price if they were to continue the mission, Luo Qing said. Pa. That bunch of trash. Luo Hongdao threw down his teacup. They can't even deal with a shattering void tier cultivator, allowing him to jump around for so long, and now they actually want to raise the price. Then, should we abandon the request? Luo Qing asked cautiously. Luo Hongdao pondered for a moment, and then asked, how much are they asking for? 100,000. Luo Hongdao almost jumped out of his seat. Why don't they go and steal that amount? He is only a lowlife of the low extreme of Mountain River tier, and has no background to speak of, yet they actually quoted such a high price? It was not the Luo clan could not afford this price, but to spend such an amount on a cultivator in the low extreme of the Mountain River tier. No matter how he thought about it, it was not worth it. That brat reached the Crimson Lake Island 3 times, and is just like a rising star. The price to assassinate him has naturally increased with the situation, Luo Qing explained. Luo Hongdao naturally knew this logic, he was just unwilling to accept it. After Luo Hongdao thought for a moment, he finally said, agree to it. We cannot have any relation to that brat's death. Yes. Luo Qing nodded. He was also in agreement on that. It was a little expensive, but if the Luo clan personally made a move and they were found out, then the crime for killing a super rookie could either be light or heavy. It could even cause the entire Luo clan to be consigned to eternal damnation. The Universal 8 Desolation technique was extremely hard to cultivate. Ling Han's comprehension ability was already very high, but he had still spent a whole 7 days' time to completely understand the first level of this cultivation technique. He forgot the 7-star secrets, and had the origin power inside his body surge forward in a new manner. This cultivation technique could simultaneously draw on spiritual chi of 6 different elemental alignments, and the origin power formed was incredibly condensed. Hence, after Ling Han had switched to cultivating this technique, his cultivation level degraded at first. That was because he had to temper his origin power once more. It was just like when a piece of rough iron had to be tempered into steel, its weight would naturally decrease. Another 10 days later, Ling Han finally returned to his initial cultivation level. However, his battle prowess was slightly stronger than before. Next, he set the Universal 8 Desolation technique aside, and began cultivating his body art. He drew out spiritual meat to consume. It was a very nutritious item, its effects surpassing the effects of true origin stones greatly. Furthermore, he had obtained a good few kilograms of it. If he actually sold it all off, it would bring him an income of a few thousand true origin stones. However, because the numbers of immortal level demonic beasts were decreasing, spiritual meat had also become something that had no lack of buyers, yet no one was willing to sell. It was not something as simple as a few thousand true origin stones. Spiritual meat needed not be cooked, and could be directly consumed. When this meat was placed in his mouth, Linghan felt as if he was eating the meat that had been reared in the Black Tower, and it was incomparably delicious. It was no wonder that spiritual meat was also one of the best delicacies of the immortal realm. However, a demonic beast of mountain river tier would only be able to produce 50 to 200 grams of spiritual meat. The amount was really much too little. All he did was eat then cultivate. Then he would eat again, and go back to cultivation. Another month had passed, and his body art finally broke through to immortal level. In this period of over a month, he had not neglected his cultivation of origin power, either. He had just managed to reach the real peak stage of the low extreme. Linghan just continued his seclusion. He wanted to rush up to the medium extreme in a single go. He began to cultivate the second level of the Universal 8 Desolation technique, and spent another half a month's time to have a complete grasp of it. Then, he drew out a large amount of true origin stones, and began to barrage this great barrier. Ordinarily speaking, even the geniuses of the Scarlet Heaven Academy would need around 5,000 years to be able to complete this step. However, Linghan had the help of the mountain river stones, so he could skip over this process of accumulating origin power. Then, he used the Universal 8 Desolation technique to reforge his origin power and stabilize his foundations so he could break through to the medium extreme in an extremely short time. This was amazing. With such a comparison, even Zhao Lun would have to admit that Linghan was superior. Finally, he began the breaking through. Though this was only a breach of a minor level, in the immortal realm, the gap between every minor level was extremely massive. Hence, the breakthrough at this step would bring about a fundamental change, for example, of the toughness of his physique, or the vitality of his body. The most direct change was lifespan, which would be raised from 100,000 years to 200,000 years. No matter how freakish Linghan was, he would not be able to succeed in a single step, because there were no mountain river stones that could solidify mountain rivers on his behalf, and he had to take it one step at a time. Thus, a whole 4 months later, Linghan finally formed his second huge mountain. He immediately exited the Black Tower. He had stayed in the Black Tower for this entire half-year's time. That was the safest place. Quang! Loud thunder rung out in the sky, and dark clouds immediately came in a dense mass. There was lightning flickering in their depths. The heavenly tribulation was coming. Linghan shot out, and came to the plaza that the Academy had deliberately set aside for undergoing the heavenly tribulation, ready to receive its arrival. Before he knew it, the first bolt of lightning had already struck. Chapter 981, Want to make some money? Chapter 981, Want to make some money? Linghan greeted the arrival of the heavenly tribulation. Initially, it was an incredibly simple matter for someone with his physique to safely endure the heavenly tribulation. His physique was on par with level 2 godly metal, and he could allow the tribulation to blast him as it liked, yet he would still be steadfast and unmoving. But if that was the case, his body would not be tempered, and his physique would only remain on its original level. Hence, for the sake of becoming stronger, he could only choose to take the initiative to shatter his own body, letting his godly bones, blood, and flesh suffer the barrage from the tribulation to be tempered and pounded in all ways. Then, he would use the indestructible Heaven's Scroll to rebuild the body after the destruction, forming the true him, so his physique could improve to another level. Still, the last time he endured the heavenly tribulation had happened just over half a year ago, and now he had to endure it a second time. Even Linghan shuddered internally at that. The feeling was really not something pleasant. If you want to become the strongest amongst your equals, and an invincible existence in the future, then you would have to endure difficulties others would not be able to. If not, what right would you have to be stronger than others? Small Tower's voice rung out in his mind. This Tsunda Tower always acted like it was lecturing him. Linghan naturally knew that logic, but it was just saying empty words, without experiencing it personally. This was really pain agonizing enough to cause him to want to die, yet he wasn't even allowed to complain a bit. Quang! The heavenly tribulation did not care how he felt. It would merely strike down one frightening attack after another, intending to erase him. Ling Han shattered his godly bones to endure the baptism by the heavenly tribulation. Someone was enduring a heavenly tribulation. This commotion was too huge, and naturally attracted the notice of those in the academy. However, there were really too many students inside the Scarlet Heaven Academy, so even if it was not every day that someone would be enduring a tribulation, there would indeed be someone enduring one here once every few days. Hence, some people had taken note, but it was only the few people that just happened to be in the vicinity, and it hadn't become a public spectacle. Moreover, at this moment, the heavenly tribulation had formed. Brilliant white lightning was dancing in the sky, and it was very difficult for any normal person to distinguish Ling Han's appearance, so he would naturally not garner more attention than this. Additionally, Ling Han was destroying his own body, and had become a mass of flesh of blood, so who could recognize him in that bloody pile? Some of them even thought Ling Han had become like this from being struck by the tribulation, and couldn't help but shake their heads as they wondered internally who this person could be. He was about to endure a tribulation, yet did not make adequate preparations. The tribulation had just begun, and he was already looking so horrible, he would definitely not be able to endure what came after. But what stunned them was that even if that idiot was more or less a pile of scrambled flesh, the heavenly tribulation still did not look like it was going to stop, and was still blasting down attacks quickly. It was apparent that that person was not dead yet. He didn't die even from that. The scene dumbfounded them. Half a day passed in the blink of an eye, and Ling Han had reformed his physical body. In the instant the tribulation dissipated, he wrapped a cloak around himself, and disappeared into thin air. There was nothing that could be done. He was now completely naked, so how could he see anyone like this? Yi, did you guys see that person's appearance? No, he ran away too fast. This is really shocking. He had obviously been blasted so horribly by the heavenly tribulation, so how could he still come back to life? Could it be that he has consumed the alchemical pill that only exists in legends, 9 Deaths Reincarnation Divine Pill? That supreme divine pill that would still grant revival even after experiencing 9 deaths? Aside from this kind of divine pill, what else could have such nature-defying effects? Amidst the sounds of discussion of these people, Ling Han had already returned to his new courtyard. He hurriedly took a bath, then dressed himself, took out food ingredients, and began barbecuing, planning to reward his stomach. He had not eaten or drunk already for a few months. Damn brat, where have you gone these few days? You made me look so hard for you. The big white cat appeared on the courtyard wall. Its nose was extremely sharp, and it had found its way here after smelling the delicious aroma of barbecued meat. This aroma was too familiar. Ling Han couldn't help but smile, and said, "Are you actually a cat or a dog? Your nose is so keen. I am a descendant of the white tiger." The big white cat meowed, and pounced on Ling Han. "Yi, you can speak." Ling Han was astonished. When the big white cat made its move, he immediately discovered that its cultivation had reached the mountain river tier. Apparently, when demonic beasts advanced into the mountain river tier, they could take human form, so it would not be strange that this cat demon could speak human language. Instead, the strange thing was it had not assumed human form yet. I am a descendant of the white tiger, so what is so strange about me being able to speak? The big white cat attacked repeatedly. However, white it was true that it had advanced into mountain river tier, and it was also a fact that it was a descendant of the white tiger. Ling Han's cultivation level was higher, and his abilities were similarly freakish, so how could he be afraid of it? Ling Han casually parried, merely defending without attacking, wanting to see how strong this cat demon was. It was really quite powerful. The big white cat's cultivation level was merely in the early stage of the low extreme, yet its battle prowess had astonishingly surpassed 4 stars, which was extremely shocking. "Humph, my bloodline has not completely awakened, or I would be even more awesome," it declared in a very tsundere manner. "Is that right?" Ling Han smiled, and suddenly threw out a furry ball of wool. Meow. The fat white cat immediately threw Ling Han off, and turned to pounce on it. Only when its claws had found the ball of wool did it erupt into a bout of meowing with anger. "You damn brat, you actually dare to tease me. Hihi, eat some meat. If you're not eating, then forget it." Ling Han sat back down. Since he now knew the abilities of this big white cat, what meaning was there to continue the fight further? He could suppress it with a single finger now. The big white cat strolled over in displeasure, but after a few pieces of meat ended up in its tummy, it was immediately radiant with delight, declaring Ling Han its brother. It had just entered into the mountain river tier not too long ago, and had just learnt how to speak. Hence, it spoke quite a lot. It was practically a chatterbox, making Ling Han want to directly stuff its mouth, or stuff up his own ears. The big white cat ate and drank at his place every day. After 2 days passed, Li Weiwei came to visit. "Damn blockhead, where did you run off to in this half a year?" The moment she entered, Li Weiwei interrogated him energetically. "Oh, cultivating in seclusion," Ling Han answered indifferently. "What did you go into seclusion for? Do you know that I was very embarrassed because of you?" Li Weiwei said, panting in rage. "What did I do to you?" Ling Han asked, smiling. Li Weiwei flopped down, and began eating the moment she grabbed some food, not the slightest bit reserved. "Tang Feng issued a challenge to you, yet there was not even a sign of you. Hence, he made a public declaration and said that you were a coward that did not dare to accept the challenge. I spoke up for you and said you were not a coward, and would very soon come out to accept the challenge. And what happened? You actually did not appear for half a year. Now, everyone in the imperial capital is saying you are not living up to your reputation, calling you a coward and a wimp. I spoke up for you, and now I've become a joke." Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, "So I've caused you to feel some grievance. Still, there was nothing that could be done. I was in seclusion, after all, so I didn't know anything." Because he feared he would be disturbed by others, he had stayed all that while inside the Black Tower. It became impossible for anyone to find him. Also, Li Weiwei looked excited. Zhao Lun has already advanced into consummate level, has won a consecutive 20 battles in the Iron Blood Stadium, and is acclaimed as a ruler of the present young generation, with no equal. Now, everyone is talking about when you can catch up to him and have a good battle. For this, there are even betting pools set up. Ling Han's eyes involuntarily lit up, and he asked, "What are the stakes?" 110 if it is within a year, 1:9 if it is within 2 years. Then, it would be 1:2 if it happens 10 years later, 2:3 if it is after 20 years, and after 100 years, it would be 10-12. In any case, the longer the time, the lower the stakes are. Ling Han showed a smile, and asked, "Want to make some money?" Chapter 982, Challenging Zhao Lun. Chapter 982, Challenging Zhao Lun. Hearing the words "make some money," Li Weiwei's beautiful eyes immediately shone. As Ling Han had been in seclusion all this while, the business of selling food ingredients naturally could only be called to a halt. With the size of hers and Ji Yuna's spatial spirit tool, the food ingredients inside could only last about a dozen days at most. They had sold off everything not long after their return. Because of this, the two girls felt great regret. Due to the fact that Ling Han had not reappeared for such a long time, even they felt ravenous. "How are we going to make money?" she quickly asked. "Soon, a large auction will begin. If I have money, I will be able to make father sit up and take notice of me." "What auction?" Ling Han asked. "Oh, the imperial capital will host an auction every once in a while, and this time just so happens to be not long after the Heavenly Sea Mystery Realm ended, so it will naturally be even grander. There will be a considerable amount of good stuff," Li Weiwei exclaimed, slightly excited. She paused, put a fierce expression on her pretty face, and said, "You haven't replied. What is the way to make money?" Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, "That's simple. Isn't there a wager about when Zhao Lun and I will battle?" Realization immediately dawned on Li Weiwei, and she quickly jumped up and clapped her hands. She declared, "We will go make a bet first, then you go and challenge Zhao Lun. Wait, what if Zhao Lun ignores you?" Ling Han snickered, and said, "That will depend on how awesome you, the daughter of the left minister, is. Let's see if you can change the wager to when I will issue a challenge to Zhao Lun. Otherwise, he would not have needed to drag Li Weiwei in." Li Weiwei quickly nodded, her expression saying "I get it." But, soon enough, a worried expression showed on her face, and she asked, "But what if Zhao Lun accepts the challenge, and you are killed by him?" In any case, that has nothing to do with me, so whatever." She answered her own question, and was indeed not the slightest bit worried. Ling Han scoffed, and said, "Zhao Lun definitely can't kill me, and if it was not for the fact that he has advanced into the consummate level, he could possibly be killed by me." This was not a mere boast. His present physique had reached the extent of level 3 godly metal, and even if a consummate level cultivator were to attack him, it would take time to penetrate his defenses. Aside from that, he still had the crimson ground locking net. Caught in it, Zhao Lun would see his cultivation level decrease. At the time, those people from the Luo clan wanted to use this divine net against that lava beast king, which meant that they had been confident that they would be able to kill that beast king with the aid of this net. Going along that line of deduction, the effect of this divine net should be to weaken the victim's cultivation level by a minor level. Zhao Lun's cultivation level would be decreased by a minor level, and he would be still trapped by the divine net, which would affect his mobility. If Ling Han summoned the annihilating dragon star arrow, it was not impossible that he could kill the former with a single strike in an instant. After all, that beast king from before was similarly in the early stage of consummate level, and it hadn't even been trapped by the net, yet wasn't it still almost killed with one arrow from him? However, could the only son of great General Zhao be killed? It was not possible even in a mortal duel. Was Ling Han not afraid that this great general's killing intent would soar, and he'd murder him with no care for the law? The greater one's abilities, the less power rules would have over him. In the first place, rules were something the strong imposed on the weak, and whether the strong themselves obeyed them or otherwise depended completely on their mood. Unless Ling Han could duck into the Black Tower after he had killed him. However, he was not a solitary entity, there was still the great Ling Empire. Ling Han shook his head. If he could not be killed, he could only give him a heavy thrashing to give the latter a deeply ingrained lesson. He was sure that as long as Zhao Lun was neither killed nor crippled, Great General Zhao would not be so shameless that he would act personally. The problem was, could he subdue Zhao Lun even with the crimson ground locking net? The other party was a 4-star genius, and even if he was weakened by a minor level, his battle prowess could still reach the early stage of consummate level. As for Ling Han, he was now in the early stage of the medium extreme, and was behind by a whole minor level. Furthermore, he could only exhibit battle prowess surpassing 5 stars at most. If not, he did not know what would happen. One had to know that he had ascended the Crimson Lakes Island thrice, and shown potential that exceeded 4 stars close to 5 stars, which was enough to make 2 great majestic empires want to kill him while he had not yet matured to his maximum potential. Then, battle prowess of 6 stars would definitely make others uneasy. "What nice dreams you have." Li Weiwei shook her head, and said, "You still don't know yet, right?" After Zhao Lun broke through, he had been bestowed with the rank of a 7th-rank military officer by the Empress, with his name engraved on the totem, so he can draw on power of the nation. He would be able to increase his battle prowess by another star at least. Ling Han's brow furrowed. Then, going by that calculation, it was practically impossible to defeat Zhao Lun. Unless everything progressed as he expected. First, he'd use the crimson ground locking net to trap his opponent, then use the annihilating dragon star arrow to deal a heavy injury. He could avoid vital points like the head and heart, and he would only have that one chance. If he missed, then he could only admit defeat. Ling Han pondered for a moment, and then said, "If I and Zhao Lun battle, there would definitely be new bets. I am sure that practically all bankers would not be so stupid as to directly open betting for whether it would be I or Zhao Lun that emerges victorious, but rather how many moves Zhao Lun would take to defeat and make me surrender." Li Weiwei quickly nodded. Otherwise, the banker would definitely lose money to death. Ling Han cracked a smile, and said, "Then we'll just make use of Zhao Lun to earn a great sum first, and step on him in the future." Li Weiwei was stunned. Why was this damn blockhead always pumped so full of confidence? Don't you know that you come from a small world, and don't have much backing? On what basis do you think that Zhao Lun would not kill you? However, it had to be admitted that this kind of confidence gave him an alluring temperament. Then hand over your money quickly. I will go now to place our bet. Her mind was soon so crammed with the words earn a great sum that even her pretty face was glowing. After Ling Han entered into the Heavenly Sea mystery realm, he had earned some money all from looting others. Then, he began cultivating, and spent a little to attain medium extreme, but added with the sum accumulated previously, there were still 4,000 true origin stones. He handed the whole sum over to Li Weiwei. Li Weiwei left impatiently, and returned only after a day. She told him that everything was settled, and the only thing they were waiting for now was for him to issue the challenge. Ling Han immediately wrote a challenge for duel, and stuck it on the main doors of the Northern Institution. It was naturally a challenge issued to Zhao Lun. The news seemed to have sprouted wings, and instantly spread throughout the whole Northern Institution, the Scarlet Heaven Academy, and the entire imperial capital. Everyone were discussing spiritedly. They had not thought that this genius that had been in silence for over half a year would finally reappear. Furthermore, he was being so high profile from the moment he appeared, actually issuing a challenge to Zhao Lun. Who was Zhao Lun? The only son of the great General Zhao, the strongest genius in the last 1,000 years, and someone who was strongly expected to perhaps reach the heavenly body tier. All of a sudden, everyone in the imperial capital was guessing whether Zhao Lun would accept the challenge or not. Ho, this junior brother disciple is quite interesting. He has just advanced into the low extreme division, and has already issued a challenge to Zhao Lun. In a courtyard of the Western Institution, there was presently a blue-robed young man, sitting peacefully and sipping tea. Behind him was a woman dressed in a tight-fitting outfit. She had a tall and slender figure, the leather of her outfit completely accentuating all the curves of her voluptuous figure. It was practically enough to make one salivate. Additionally, her appearance was no disappointment to such a fine figure. Her looks were filled with a wild kind of temptation. Her black hair was done in a large braid, falling straight down to her hips, making that rounded, erect bottom appear even more impressive. When the woman saw that the blue-robed young man's teacup was almost empty, she hurriedly refilled his cup. She said, "Young master, in your opinion, will Zhao Lun accept the challenge?" Chapter 983 Astonishing Stakes. Chapter 983 Astonishing Stakes. Of course not. The blue-robed young man shook his head. His cultivation level is so much higher than Ling Han's, so even if he won, it would be an embarrassment. So, why would he accept? Yet the bodysuit beauty said, "Young master may not know, but Zhao Lun still has a personal grudge with Ling Han." Oh! An expression of surprise appeared on the blue-robed young man's face. How could this be? What kind of abilities and background did Zhao Lun have? To be blunt, even if Ling Han wanted to offend Zhao Lun, he shouldn't have a chance to. This blue-robed young man's name was Shuo Yuan, and he was the third son of the great General Shuo Jing of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire. He was also his youngest son. His talent in martial arts was similarly amazing, and he had long since advanced into consummate level of the Mountain River tier 1,000 years ago, and by now, had reached the peak stage. Ordinarily, he should have left the academy, but if the son of the great General Shuo was determined to remain at the academy, how could they dare to chase him out? To the rich and noble, the Scarlet Heaven Academy was not just a place for cultivation. In truth, the conditions in their own homes were considerably better. The reason why they came to the academy was for making connections, and to accumulate their own power. Among those that could enroll in the academy, who was not a genius? For example, Zhao Lun himself had 3 great followers, and each of them was a 2-star genius, and according to rumors, they might even be 3-star geniuses. Who did not want to gain the support of this kind of talent? Part of the reason why the academy was divided into 4 institutions, with each on poor terms with the others, was because they did not want some descendant of nobility to stretch his arms too far. This was an active restriction, so they could only go crazy in a single institution. The bodysuit beauty was naturally not going to wait for Shuo Yuan to voice the question, and hurriedly continued, "It is because of Shui Yenyu. Apparently, she has already pledged herself in marriage to Ling Han. Her name was Liu Yingxi, was a child that great General Shuo had chosen from the orphanage. She had extraordinary talent in martial arts, and was both Shuo Yuan's childhood playmate and sparring partner. She was also his Death Guard one. There were a total of 4 Death Guards like her, and they were collectively called 4 Panthers. Shuo Yuan was stunned for a moment, and then suddenly erupted into loud laughter. He was laughing so hard that he was practically tearing up. Zhao Lun, aren't you extremely proud? Why is it that you can't even keep your own woman? Even though the 7 generals were of equal rank, the relations between them could definitely not be considered amicable in any sense of the word. Furthermore, he and Zhao Lun were both pampered, wealthy young masters of the imperial capital, so there was no lack of grudges between them, as they both wanted to snatch the esteemed title of the greatest young master of the imperial capital. Hence, knowing that Zhao Lun had actually experienced such a great loss, Shuo Yuan was naturally going to laugh loudly. Liu Ying, you will not betray me, right? Shuo Yuan abruptly asked. Liu Ying's heart shook, and she quickly knelt down, and replied, I will definitely not betray young master. Shuo Yuan swept a look over her, and said, go and investigate this person well, I am very intrigued by him. Yes. Liu Ying stood up, and left through the doors. Is it that you won't or you dare not? An unfathomable smile appeared on Shuo Yuan's face. Tang Feng almost went mad in fury. Ling Han ignored his challenge, so he looked down on him as a coward, and claimed that Ling Han was as brave as a mouse, yet the latter still completely ignored him. But now, he was directly issuing a challenge to Zhao Lun. Wasn't this completely overlooking him? He wanted nothing more than to tear Ling Han to pieces. This challenge from Ling Han had instantly suppressed his fame once more. Zhao Lun did not respond to Ling Han's challenge. Instead, it was a follower under him, Bai Yuanxi, that responded, expressing his disdain for Ling Han's challenge. He said that Ling Han was an ugly person, and hence always up to no good. What qualified him to battle Zhao Lun? If Ling Han wanted a battle, Bai Yuanxi would keep him company, but the condition was that it had to be a duel to the death. All of a sudden, everyone turned their attention to Ling Han, wanting to see how he would respond. One had to know that though Bai Yuanxi was not as dazzling as Zhao Lun, he was also a great elite of the high extreme of the mountain river tier, and furthermore a genius that was above 2 stars close to 3 stars. In a duel to the death with him, the chances that Ling Han would be instantly killed was close to 90%, no? Did he dare to accept or not? Ling Han immediately gave a positive response. He was going to battle. The whole imperial capital was in an uproar over this. Ling Han was the hottest rookie now, while Bai Yuanxi, whether it was due to his personal abilities or the fact that he was a follower of Zhao Lun, received great attention as well. These two people were going to be in a mortal duel, which was definitely going to attract attention from all sides. As expected, there was naturally a new betting pool for the outcome of the battle between the two of them. How is it? What are the stakes? Ling Han appeared quite excited. Li Weiwei giggled, and said, if you win, it's 1:100. A muscle twitched in Ling Han's cheek. Although he knew that the higher the betting stakes were, the more he would earn, he had never imagined that it would be as exaggeratedly high as 1:100. How pessimistic a view did the masses actually have of him? There are no stakes for Bai Yuanxi winning, only stakes for how many moves he will take to beat you. Defeated with 1 move, 10-11, 2 moves, 10-12, 3 moves, 10:13, Li Weiwei began introducing the stakes again. It was apparent that even the banker did not have an optimistic view of Ling Han. Ling Han being able to withstand 100 moves actually reached the exaggerated extent of 110. Blockhead, how are we going to bet next? Li Weiwei's eyes lit up. Previously, she had really made a great sum. How much have you earned exactly? Ling Han couldn't help but ask. Your bet was 4,000, and I and big sister Yun placed a bet of 3,000 each, so we earned a total of 100,000. Li Weiwei exclaimed excitedly. Together, the two women actually earned more than he did. Ling Han sighed, and said, of course, the bet is on my win. Hey. It can't be that you are envious that big sister Yun and I earn more than you, so you want to scam us, right? Li Weiwei looked at Ling Han suspiciously. Am I that kind of person? Ling Han shook his head. Don't worry, if you bet on my win, the stakes are 1:100, and I guarantee that you two will win so much you'll be flying. Moreover, isn't my own capital of 4,000 also included in the bet? True. Li Weiwei finally nodded at this, and then asked curiously, what gives you that kind of confidence? My own abilities, naturally. Ling Han laughed. Zhao Lun did not accept the challenge. This was within Ling Han's expectations. In any case, he had only issued the challenge to win some money. Still, he had not foreseen that Bai Yuanxi would respond, and actually allow him to earn another sum. I'll trust you this once. However, if you cause me and big sister Yun to lose money, we will not spare you. Li Weiwei threatened fiercely. Don't worry. Just think of this as the dowry I present to the both of you. There is no way you two are going to lose money, Ling Han said with a grin. Now, their capital of 10,000 had increased tenfold, and reached the large sum of 100,000. If he won with the stakes being 1:100, it would then become an astronomical sum of 1 million. This was even more profitable than alchemy. Unfortunately, this was also because the data on both sides was unequal. If they could know Ling Han as well as he knew himself, then they would only place the stakes at 110 at most. Ling Han was filled with anticipation. After he had obtained the money, it would be just in time to participate in the large-scale auction. He really wanted to see what kind of good stuff would be sold at the auction. There was a 3-day buffer period until the day of the battle, but Shui Yenyu did not appear, which made Ling Han feel slightly regretful. In these 3 days, he refined the final Flame Mountain Riverstone, completely stabilizing his cultivation level at the medium extreme. At the same time, the might of the divine patterns of flame progressed another step further. After all, there was a total of 7 divine patterns of flame, which was far more than the divine patterns of gravity. She has to sacrifice her life if it saves him in critical moment. Think bodyguards blocking bullets for big shots. Chapter 984, The Unfortunate Tang Feng. Chapter 984, The Unfortunate Tang Feng. 3 days went by, and Ling Han headed toward Thousand Peak Mountain. This was the location of their duel. This duel had attracted a huge amount of attention, and thus many people turned up to spectate the battle. Not only did students from the academy come, but all kinds of people from the imperial capital also appeared. They all went to great lengths to enter the academy so they could personally witness the duel. Even Zhao Lun turned up to spectate the battle. He stood atop a mountain peak with his hands clasped behind his back, and there were another 4 people standing beside him. They were Shuo Yuan, Liu Hualan, Jing Wuxue, and Shangguan Yuanji. Each of them was renowned in the academy. Originally, Zhao Lun had been slightly weaker than these 4 individuals. However, after he advanced into the consummate level of the mountain river tier, his standing became equal with the 4 of them. Shuo Yuan chuckled, and asked, how many exchanges do you guys think that brat can last? He's only at the low extreme, let's say at the peak stage, Liu Hualan said. Even if he's a 4-star genius, that's only equivalent to a battle prowess on par with the peak stage of the medium extreme. Bai Yuanxi would easily suppress him even if he was only an ordinary cultivator at the high extreme. Not to mention, Bai Yuanxi is already at the middle stage of the medium extreme, and is even close to a 3-star genius. The Liu clan had many members who were loyal subordinates to Great General Zhao, thus, Liu Hualan was naturally inclined to fully support Zhao Lun. However, she had spoken the truth, and both Jing Wuxue and Shangguan Yuanji nodded in agreement. Meanwhile, Zhao Lun wore a look of contempt and disdain. Then let's make a bet, Shuo Yuan said with a chuckle. How so? What are the stakes? Zhao Lun asked. He and Shuo Yuan were both sons of great generals, and often clashed to determine who was the superior one among the two. As such, Zhao Lun naturally wasn't willing to back down. I wager that the brat can last for over 500 exchanges. Shuo Yuan smiled, and said, in fact, he might even win. Zhao Lun and the others were all astonished. How is that possible? The difference in power between Ling Han and Bai Yuanxi was as clear as day. No matter what he did, there was not a single shred of chance that Ling Han could win. In fact, it was hard to say if he could even last for more than 10 exchanges. So, How could he last for 500 exchanges, much less win? Brother Shaw, are you really going to persist with your wager? Jing Wuxue asked in a frosty voice. He was naturally cold and indifferent. It wasn't as if he held a strong animosity for everyone else. A smile stretched across Shaw Yuan's face, and he said, I'll just make a bet with you guys. Since you're insistent on giving us a gift, count me in, Zhao Lun said. I'll wager white cloud star metal. Gasp. Liu Hualan, Jing Wuxue, and Shangguan Yuanji were all stunned. White cloud star metal was an extremely precious level 7 godly metal. Even Shaw Yuan was slightly startled. Zhao Lun, how bold. Are you afraid? Zhao Lun chuckled coldly. I accept your wager, Shaw Yuan said confidently. Liu Hualan immediately said, since Brother Shaw is so bold, I can't let him down. I'll wager 3 drops of Cloud Phoenix True Blood. It was another huge stake. Of course, the Cloud Phoenix True Blood that Liu Hualan wagered couldn't have come from a true phoenix, an ancient divine beast. Rather, it was from its descendant whose bloodline was already extremely diluted. Even so, having the term phoenix in its name reflected its strength and rarity. He, then I'll wager a 3 rhino dark jade, Shangguan Yuanji said with a smile. 1 blade of Yangxing grass, Jing Wuxue said coldly. Even though Shaw Yuan had a relatively strong understanding of Ling Han, his mouth still went dry when he heard the stakes that the others brought in. If he lost, paying out the value of those 4 treasures would cause him to be short of money for the next 10,000 years. But what if he won? He would win huge. Riches were found in danger. Then, let us wait and see, Shaw Yuan said with a chuckle. However, Zhao Lun and the others could all hear the nervousness in his voice. This was normal as the stakes were simply too high. Moreover, Ling Han's chances of winning were extremely slim. Ling Han. Tang Feng leaped out from the crowd and stood in Ling Han's path. He had already been waiting here for a long time. Ling Han glanced at him and said indifferently, Who are you? Tang Feng almost fainted in anger. I'm the undisputed number 1 in the low extreme division, yet you actually don't know me? Do you dare battle me? He asked loudly. Ling Han shook his head as he smiled, and said, Forget about it. I don't want to bully you. How arrogant. Tang Feng was fuming as he threw a palm toward Ling Han's head. He and Ling Han were both of the low extreme division, so he didn't need to seek Ling Han's agreement before engaging in battle. He could attack without worries, and was free to do as he pleased as long as he didn't cripple or kill his opponent. Ling Han leaned sideways to dodge, and he said, This is the only warning I'll give. Don't provoke me, or else you're merely digging yourself a hole. Humph. Tang Feng ignored his words, and divine light started to ripple from his body. When he extended his arm again, there were already 3 divine patterns etched on his palm, each radiating an ancient and primitive aura. This is the 3-1 return to origin technique, right? Someone in the crowd speculated. That's right. I've heard that Tang Feng entered an ancient site once, and he received this profound technique there. Its might is astonishing, and it's part of the reason why he's become the number 1 in the low extreme division of the Northern Institution. I'm curious to see how Ling Han will block it. It should be no problem. Otherwise, how can he duel by UNC if he can't even deal with Tang Feng? If he can't block this, then he'll be insta-killed by UNC. Boom. Tang Feng charged over. He appeared extremely mighty as he bathed in the glow of the divine light. You asked for this, Ling Han said as he attacked. Boom. He didn't suppress his aura any longer, and the image of 2 huge mountains appeared behind his back. There were divine patterns etched on these mountains, with the earthen yellow ones being divine patterns of gravity, and the fiery red ones divine patterns of flames. Peng. Tang Feng was sent flying by Ling Han's fist, and crashed into a nearby mountain face, instantly creating a deep human-shaped crater. His entire body was embedded in the mountain. His physique wasn't on the level of godly metals, so dark spots started to swim before his eyes even though he had used his origin power to hastily block Ling Han's strike. His skin started to crack, and blood gushed from his wounds. At this moment, everyone fell silent. However, after a short moment, it instantly became noisy again. Who'd have thought? Ling Han has actually advanced to the medium extreme. Amazing. He was still only at the shattering void tier when he entered the mystery realm. It's only been half a year, yet he's already broken through to the medium extreme of the mountain river tier. His cultivation speed is incredible. Indeed. Even with the help of mountain river stones, he still needed to comprehend the two extremes of the mountain river tier by himself. Even 100 years is a short time to spend. However, he only needed half a year. An absolute freak. Haha. No wonder Ling Han ignored Tang Feng's challenge for such a long time. He was cultivating in seclusion in order to break through to the medium extreme. Tang Feng's so unfortunate. Ling Han is clearly more talented than him, and now he even enjoys an advantage in cultivation level. No wonder Tang Feng was defeated in a single strike. Normally, students at the medium extreme aren't allowed to actively attack students at the low extreme. However, he actively provoked Ling Han, so even if his teeth are knocked out, he can only swallow them along with his blood. The spectators were both surprised and amused, while Tang Feng had become nothing more than a clown at this moment. His sole purpose was to highlight Ling Han's strength. Atop the mountain peak, apart from Shuo Yuan, Zhao Lun and the others all wore expressions of astonishment. Even they were unable to fathom Ling Han's tremendous cultivation speed. Zhao Lun chuckled coldly, and asked, Shuo Yuan, is this the reason for your confidence? So what if Ling Han had broken through to the medium extreme? He was only at the early stage, and even if he was a freak and a 5-star genius, his battle prowess could only be on par with the middle stage of the high extreme. Bai Yuanxi, on the other hand, his cultivation level was already at the middle stage of the high extreme, and he was even a 3-star genius on top of that. There was a difference of almost 3 sub-minor levels, so no matter what happened, it would definitely be a one-sided duel. Chapter 985 Insta-Killing by UNC. Chapter 985 Insta-Killing by UNC. Zhao Lun, since when did you become so impatient? Shuo Yuan laughed loudly, and said, we'll find out soon if we keep watching. Zhao Lun humphed in reply. He was a few hundred years younger than Shuo Yuan, and Shuo Yuan was already at the peak stage of the consummate level while he had only just advanced to the consummate level. As such, there was a difference of 3 sub-minor levels between them. If they fought, Zhao Lun was confident that he wouldn't lose, as he had secret techniques up his sleeves. However, just as he wasn't afraid of Shuo Yuan wasn't afraid of him, either. Thus, he could only humph after hearing Shuo Yuan's retort. Otherwise, being the petty person that he was, Zhao Lun would definitely think of ways to screw Shuo Yuan over. Ling Han arrived at the arena that was located halfway up the mountain. Half a year ago, he had fought against Luo Ba in this same arena. Who would have thought that he would have another mortal duel so soon? Bai Yuanxi was already waiting for him in the arena. He didn't seem impatient in the least, and sat cross-legged, looking like an unmoving stone statue. Elites such as him would be able to maintain their mental state for a few days, let alone a mere few hours. Ling Han stopped 30 meters from Bai Yuanxi. You've come. Bai Yuanxi opened his eyes, and it instantly was as if a bolt of lightning had flashed across the clear sky. As expected of an elite at the high extreme. Just a single glance is already so powerful. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, I've come. You've broken through the medium extreme so quickly, Bai Yuanxi said. How commendable. It's just so. Bai Yuanxi faltered for a moment before continuing, my young master is still in need of one more dog. If you obediently surrender, I can still spare your life. Ling Han sneered coldly, and said, it's your choice to be a dog, but don't drag others down to the same low level as yourself. You're truly base to the core. How dare you? Bai Yuanxi roared loudly. Quang. Blood started seeping out from the ears of many spectators, and this shocked them immensely. Just the might of his roar was already so terrifying. There was a frosty look in Bai Yuanxi's eyes as he glared at Ling Han, and he said, since you're unwilling to yield, die. Ling Han pointed a finger at him, and said, I originally planned to spare your life. However, since that's the case, I won't hold back, either. You speak nothing but empty threat. Bai Yuanxi leaped out, and didn't even bother to summon a weapon. He merely spread his right hand, which was etched with 9 intertwining divine patterns, and pressed it toward Ling Han. His strength was far superior, so all he needed to do was crush his opponent head-on. A smile blossomed on Ling Han's face. Xiu. He also leaped toward Bai Yuanxi. Both of them had leaped at each other, so it was only natural that they quickly collided. Peng. Divine light fluctuated, and waves rippled across space as Bai Yuanxi's palm slammed into Ling Han's chest. Bai Yuanxi wore a look of pride. Since Ling Han was struck by his palm, his only fate was shattering into pieces. However, his look of pride quickly became one of shock and disbelief because Ling Han was not only unscathed, but was even smiling at him. I must be seeing things. He had no time to ponder why Ling Han was unscathed as he hastily shot back in retreat. This was far too uncanny. Right at this moment, Ling Han waved his arm and tossed out a net. Originally, Bai Yuanxi would have never fallen victim to such an attack. However, who told them to be so close to each other right now? Moreover, this attack was launched during a time when he thought that he had killed his opponent. The net unfurled and instantly entrapped him. Although Bai Yuanxi was startled, he wasn't flustered in the least. He had been to many ancient sites with Zhao Lun, and had also experienced a great number of dangerous situations. Being calm in the face of danger was the most basic attribute of elites such as him. Otherwise, what right would he have to follow Zhao Lun? Chong. He drew his sword, and like a melody, the brilliant glow of his sword instantly echoed through the air. Goodbye. Ling Han summoned a bow and immediately notched his ultimate arrow. He didn't want to give his opponent any chances. He wanted to slay one of Zhao Lun's powerful followers. Bai Yuanxi's hair all stood on ends at this instant, and a sense of great danger instantly gripped his heart. He frantically tried to draw on his full power, yet to his shock, he discovered that his origin power had actually been suppressed. At most, he could only wield a power at the middle stage of the medium extreme. What net is this? This thought flashed through his mind, yet at this instant, Ling Han's arrow was already pointing at his head. The arrow seemed like a fatal weapon that had been nurtured by heaven and earth, and sweat involuntarily formed on Bai Yuanxi's palms. Ling Han released his fingers, and the arrow became a streak of dazzling light as it raced out. Pu. The arrow easily pierced through Bai Yuanxi's head, and then flew out from the other side. Only the feathers of the arrow were stained with a few drops of blood. Pa. Bai Yuanxi's entire head exploded. Insta-kill. A deathly silence fell over the surroundings. Who would have imagined that Ling Han could defeat Bai Yuanxi? Moreover, not only did he win, he even performed an unbelievable insta-kill. If this result was flipped, no one would have been surprised. After all, Bai Yuanxi possessed the strength to achieve such a feat. Now, however, everyone's mouth was wide agape in shock and disbelief. Indeed, there were prodigies who could win against people with higher cultivation levels. Otherwise, there wouldn't be the notion of 1-star geniuses, 2-star geniuses, and so on. However, the difference in cultivation level between Ling Han and Bai Yuanxi was clear for all to see. It was a full 5 sub-minor levels. Moreover, Bai Yuanxi was himself close to the level of a 3-star genius. Thus, the difference between him and Ling Han was at least 7 stars. Ling Han had managed to insta-kill someone while surpassing 7 stars? This was unbelievable. Who could believe this? Atop the mountain peak, Zhao Lun's expression instantly became dark. Someone like him obviously wouldn't care whether Bai Yuanxi died or not. After all, Bai Yuanxi was merely a dog who did his bidding. If he died, Zhao Lun could merely look for a new dog. Would he need to worry about no one pledging themselves to him? Of course not. The problem was, one needed to look at the owner before beating a dog. Now that his dog had been shot dead before his very eyes, where was he to put his face? I remember now. That's the crimson ground locking net. What crimson what net? Crimson ground locking net. If one's trapped, their cultivation level will be suppressed by 1 full minor level. No wonder. The spectators all nodded in realization. If Bai Yuanxi's cultivation level was suppressed by 1 minor level, then his peak battle prowess would only be able to reach the peak stage of the medium extreme. As such, being insta-killed by Ling Han went from an impossibility to a possibility. Humph! Zhao Lun leaped down from the mountain peak and landed beside Bai Yuanxi's corpse. He glared at Ling Han, and said frostily, "You killed him? If you're not blind, you can probably see very clearly." Ling Han was drained of all energy after unleashing the ultimate arrow, yet he didn't back down a single inch. Everyone gasped in astonishment. That was Zhao Lun, the #1 prodigy of the Scarlet Heaven Academy, and the only child of great General Zhao Ling Han was facing. A dark shadow fell across Zhao Lun's face, and he said coldly, "Since you've killed my underling, there's nothing more to say. Kneel down and kill yourself." So domineering. Ling Han roared with laughter, and said, "Young Master Zhao, are you stupid? No one can kill your underlings. It was a fair duel, and I killed him without breaking any rules. My conscience would be clear even if the Empress herself were to question me. Humph! You killed my underling, so you deserve to die." Zhao Lun raised his eyebrows, and an overwhelming aura instantly emanated from his body. **NT. Ling Han sneered. He was just about to retrieve his crimson ground locking net and leave. Shua! Zhao Lun struck a palm toward Ling Han. He was at the consummate level, and he was more so a 4-star genius. How terrifying was his attack! Moreover, Ling Han was at his weakest right now. Peng! Ling Han was instantly hit and sent flying by the strike. Still not dead. A look of surprise involuntarily appeared on Zhao Lun's face as he gazed at Ling Han, who had blood seeping from the corners of his mouth. Chapter 986, Beautiful Guards. Chapter 986, Beautiful Guards. Although the palm strike just then wasn't Zhao Lun's full-strength attack, it was still definitely not something that a cultivator at the medium extreme should have been able to handle. When people spoke of star geniuses, they weren't referring to defenses, but rather referring to the destructive ability caused by battle prowess. Thus, even if Ling Han was a fabled 5-star genius, his defenses should still have only been at the early stage of the medium extreme. How was there only some blood seeping from his mouth after he took a strike from Zhao Lun? Zhao Lun immediately recalled that Ling Han had been unscathed after taking a strike from Bai Yuanxi just then. However, Ling Han had immediately insta-killed Bai Yuanxi after that, and his shocking feat caused everyone to forget that scene. Don't tell me that his body is forged from godly metal. Zhao Lun was astonished as this thought flashed through his mind. However, his hand didn't stop, and he instantly delivered another palm strike at Ling Han. Although his strike just then hadn't killed Ling Han, it had already succeeded in wounding him. It was evident that it was still possible to wound Ling Han even though his physique was incredibly strong. Ling Han hastily retreated. Unless he was faced with certain death, he definitely wouldn't expose the secret of his spatial god tool in front of so many people. However, he had just unleashed an ultimate arrow, so he still needed some time to recover his strength. Right now, he wouldn't even be able to handle a cultivator at the shattering void tier, much less Zhao Lun. Zhao Lun sneered, and said, "I'm already targeting you, so how can you escape?" His palm rushed forward and slammed into Ling Han's chest. Pu. Ling Han was sent flying once again. He felt extremely unwell, and it was as if his insides were churning violently. To his delight, however, both his origin power and stamina were recovering rapidly. It would take 30 minutes at most for him to recover to his optimal condition. The speed of recovery for his stamina was as he expected, but why was his origin power also recovering so quickly? This was a change that only occurred after he reached the medium extreme. Hang on, he had also recultivated the Universal 8 Desolation technique, so was it perhaps the effect of this cultivation technique? Also, although he was at the Mountain River tier before, he had never cultivated any immortal level cultivation technique. Did this also have an effect? Ling Han wasn't sure, because he had undergone too big a transformation after shooting that arrow in the flame cave. As a result, he wasn't able to determine what the main reason for his fast recovery was. Perhaps it was the combination of his transformations that led to this situation. Peng! He collapsed to the ground, and blood seeped from the corners of his mouth again. His godly bones groaned and crackled, and it was as if they were about to fracture. Zhao Lun was no ordinary consummate level cultivator, with his battle prowess surpassing his cultivation level by 4 stars. Thus, Ling Han still suffered some wounds even though his physique was on par with level 3 godly metal. However, the surrounding spectators almost wet their pants in fright. Ling Han was only at the medium extreme, yet he was only bleeding a little after taking 2 strikes from Zhao Lun head-on. This was far too unbelievable. Zhao Lun's eyes were icy cold as he strode toward Ling Han. So what if Ling Han's physique was powerful? Could this stop Zhao Lun from killing him? Zhao Lun, you're taking it too far. Li Weiwei stood forward bravely, and said, "He's my man, and I forbid you from laying another finger on him." Zhao Lun didn't stop, and he replied, "Fourth young miss, I'd give you face if this person was your husband. However, he's only a dog of yours, and my underling had also been killed by him. So, it's only natural that he should pay with his life." Bullsh *T. Li Weiwei shouted in anger. She had also been spoiled and pampered since childhood, and she had never been retorted to like this before. Thus, she instantly cursed upon hearing Zhao Lun's words. She angrily pointed at Zhao Lun, and shouted, they were clearly taking part in a fair duel. In fact, Bai Yuanxi was even a minor level above Ling Han. If the duel was unfair for anyone, it was unfair for Ling Han. "I don't care. I only saw my underling being killed by this dog. If I don't kill him, my followers will feel disappointed and alienated." Zhao Lun was also unreasonable, and he kept coming back to this same argument. As a direct descendant of a great general, he would be able to trivialize his killing of Ling Han as long as he had an excuse. He could escape the laws and punishments of both the Academy and Majestic Empire, and he would be able to swagger back out after lying low for 2 or 3 years. After that, there would be absolutely no repercussions. Li Weiwei screamed angrily, and she shouted, "I don't care. You can kill him over my dead body. Fourth young miss, you regard yourself too highly," Zhao Lun said as he made a tapping motion toward Li Weiwei. Pu. A streak of light instantly shot into Li Weiwei's body and rendered her both immobile and unable to speak. A radiant smile stretched across Zhao Lun's face, and he said to Ling Han, "You think I can't kill you just because we're in the academy? Wrong. It's simply that I've never considered you worthy enough to justify a second thought. However, you dared to refuse to become my dog, and now you've even killed my underling. You're seeking death. Zhao Lun, you merely have an advantage because you've cultivated for a few more years than me," Ling Han said in disdain. "If we were at the same age or same cultivation level, I would be able to suppress you with a single hand." Gasp. Everyone sucked in a sharp breath. If Ling Han had kneeled down and begged for forgiveness, perhaps Zhao Lun would have let him off the hook. After all, the latter had only lost a little face. However, Ling Han chose to provoke him further, and such an action was merely pushing himself closer to death. Thinking about it more closely, though, Ling Han's claim actually seemed to be quite reasonable. What cultivation level was Zhao Lun at when he was 20 years old? Indeed, he was a freakish talent, and he had reached 20 stars of the Shattering Void tier in his 20s. The Mountain River tier didn't contain him for long, either, yet he was still only at the low extreme before the age of 50. Under such a comparison, the difference between the two was especially clear. Zhao Lun chuckled coldly, and said, "What's your identity? Are you worthy of challenging me?" Peng. He lashed out and sent Ling Han flying again. Quite some time had already passed since Zhao Lun had launched his first attack. So be it if no one had reacted in time after his first strike. However, it had already been so long, so the Academy was most likely aware of this already, right? Even so, not a single elder appeared. Although Zhao Lun looked unstoppable right now, any single cultivator at the Sun Moon tier would be able to easily suppress him. Even a 5-star genius wouldn't be able to surpass the barrier of an entire tier. Was the Academy silently allowing this? Could the son of great General Zhao act as he pleased? A chilly sensation involuntarily welled up in the spectators' hearts. Today, Zhao Lun's victim was Ling Han. So, what if his victim became them tomorrow? He was clearly surrounded by tens of thousands of spectators, but not a single person stepped forward to stop him. How could this not instill fear and panic in their minds? "Stop!" Another shout traveled over, and everyone saw a beautiful female speedily flying over. "Heh! It's Jiyu Lingyu." "Really? How has she also become acquainted with Ling Han?" Gasp! Out of the 3 beauties of the imperial capital, 2 have actually stepped forward to help him. This guy has such luck with the ladies. Everyone immediately recognized the newcomer. She was Jiyu Lingyu, one of the 3 beauties of the imperial capital. In addition, she was also a new student at the Alchemy institution. Zhao Lun's expression instantly became even darker. He didn't give a toss about Jiyu Lingyu being a student of the Alchemy institution. However, what pissed him off was the fact that so many beauties were willing to stand up for Ling Han. Was Shui Yenyu blind? He was the only child of great General Zhao, and his own talent in cultivation was also astonishing, with countless people praising him as the #1 prodigy of these 1,000 years. Moreover, he was also handsome beyond words. So, why did no stunning beauty throw herself into his arms? He couldn't even compete against an ant from a small world. This made him boil in anger and simmer with killing intent. Chapter 987 More Helping Hands. Chapter 987 More Helping Hands. Zhao Lun had only wanted to kill Ling Han to save face before. From this instant on, however, he was finally taking Ling Han seriously, now viewing him as an enemy whom he definitely had to kill. Facing an enemy, of course he had to be as ruthless as the autumn wind was to falling leaves. Zhao Lun wore a cold expression as he made a tapping motion toward Jiyu Lingyu. As if becoming a stone statue, she instantly became immobile. "Heh, no wonder you're so arrogant and dare to challenge me. It turns out that you're hiding behind women." Zhao Lun closed in on Ling Han and delivered another palm strike toward him. "However, no one that I've wanted to kill has ever escaped alive." Peng! The ground tremored as his palm slammed down, yet Ling Han had already disappeared from the ground. There was a hint of astonishment on Zhao Lun's face as he had just seen Ling Han push off from the ground in a timely manner, relying on the momentum of his motion to evade his strike. Ling Han performed some stretches as he channeled the indestructible Heaven's Scroll. The wounds on his body instantly started to heal at a speed that was visible to the naked eye. There was a glimmer in his eyes, and he said, "Zhao Lun, you still don't have the right to do as you please." After such a long time, he had already recovered some of his strength. "Is that so?" Zhao Lun said as he immediately composed himself. He would be able to easily suppress Ling Han as long as he was still at the medium extreme. He extended an arm and used his origin power to form a gigantic palm that bore down toward Ling Han from the sky. Not only was this palm incredibly quick, but it was also incredibly large. There was absolutely no way to escape it. Ling Han drew on all his power before throwing his fists toward the sky. However, the difference in power was too large, and he was still mercilessly struck down. He spat out another mouthful of blood. However, under everyone's surprised gaze, he immediately crawled up again, his body brimming with a soaring fighting spirit. Is this person an invincible god of war? Everyone was shocked, speechless. Normally speaking, a cultivator at the consummate level could easily crush a cultivator at the medium extreme with a single strike. After all, there was a battle prowess differential of a whopping 8 stars. However, Ling Han stood up time and time again, and this refreshed everyone's understanding of cultivation. So, cultivators at the medium extreme can also become this powerful. What cultivation technique is this ant from the small world practicing? Or what kind of mystical treasures has he received? Why is his battle prowess so high, and why is his physique so formidable? Even Zhao Lun started to develop covetous thoughts. He discovered that he had truly underestimated this person from the small world. He had always thought that small worlds were primitive and unable to produce any rare treasures. He was wrong. He refused to believe that anyone could be born as such. Ling Han had definitely received some kind of inheritance, some kind of astonishing inheritance. It would be his now. Die. Zhao Lun finally became serious, and divine patterns fluctuated with a terrifying might as he delivered a palm strike. Ling Han roared loudly as he unleashed his earth-overturning seal and activated his Eye of Truth. Peng! There was a loud collision, and he was instantly sent flying again. To say nothing of the fact that Zhao Lun was a 4-star genius, the 8 sub-minor levels between them was already something that Ling Han couldn't overcome. However, his physique was far too formidable, and his skin merely cracked a little after he faced Zhao Lun's strike head-on. His godly bones were completely unscathed. This was nothing to Ling Han, and his wounds instantly started to heal rapidly as he channeled the indestructible Heaven's Scroll. Everyone's eyes bulged out in surprise. They had never seen anyone with such a powerful physique before. So be it if Ling Han's physique was formidable, but what was with his freakish healing ability as well? Unless one was able to severely wound Ling Han with a single strike, it was completely possible that he could heal himself time and time again. If one could only cause him minor wounds, it would be useless even if they were to completely exhaust themselves attacking him. Ha 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 ha. Following a loud laugh, a figure leaped down from the mountain peak and landed between Ling Han and Zhao Lun. Sure Yuan. He unfurled his fan with a swoosh, and after flapping it a few times, he said, Zhao Lun, where are my winnings? A look of anger instantly surfaced on Zhao Lun's face, and he said, do you think that I'm going to cheat you? That's hard to say. Every day is an uneasy day before the winnings enter my pocket. Sho Yuan smiled, and said, I have to ask for my winnings openly even if you're my blood brother. Hurry up and hand me my winnings. Zhao Lun knew that Sho Yuan was purposefully distracting him in order to protect Ling Han. However, how could he do as Sho Yuan pleased? Sho Yuan, don't think that I'm unaware of what you're doing, he said coldly. What am I doing? Sho Yuan asked with a smile. Zhao Lun took a deep breath, and said, I'll give you 2 sheets of white cloud star metal if you let today's matter slide. Sho Yuan's strength and status were both equal to his, and it would genuinely be a hassle if he were to stick his nose into the matter. Thus, he was willing to sacrifice another sheet of white cloud star metal in exchange for Sho Yuan leaving the matter between him and Ling Han alone. 2 sheets of white cloud star metal? Sho Yuan's hearts thumped in excitement. 1 sheet of white cloud star metal was only enough to form part of a god tool and raise its quality by a little. 2 sheets, on the other hand, were enough to forge a complete god tool. That was a level 7 god tool. Just thinking about it made him shiver in eagerness. One had to realize, godly metals became extremely rare starting from level 5 onwards. He only pondered for a short moment before immediately coming to a decision. Deal. After saying this, he retreated to the side and acted as if the matter had nothing to do with him. Zhao Lun turned his gaze to Ling Han once more. This brat had just caused him to lose another sheet of white cloud star metal, and this made his killing intent burn even stronger. At the same time, he also became more eager to learn the unbelievably powerful secret behind Ling Han's power. Ling Han glanced at Sho Yuan, his good impression of him vanishing into smoke. Then, he drew his divine sword and raised his left palm as he prepared to defend his dignity. Meow! Who dares to touch this king's cat slave? The big white cat brandished its paws at Zhao Lun as it appeared. Head Fu's beast pet. Zhao Lun said in surprise. This lowly ant from the small world was truly mysterious. In just a few days, he had already become acquainted with those related to the left minister, Head Fu, and the Alchemy Institution. Pay. Trash such as humans are all this king's cat slaves, the big white cat said proudly. Heh, for the sake of Head Fu, I'll spare your life. Zhao Lun made a pointing motion in an attempt to subdue the white cat. Shio. The white cat's body flashed aside at an incredible speed. Zhao Lun was slightly startled. The speed of the white cat was beyond his expectations. However, Zhao Lun was merely a little surprised. After all, his cultivation level of the low extreme was absolute. The big white cat was immobilized by Zhao Lun after only 3 exchanges. Zhao Lun was also careful with his attacks, and he only stripped the big white cat of its ability to move. He didn't hurt it a single bit. Detestable human, hurry up and release this king, the big white cat yelled. It appeared extremely furious. Everyone was astonished. The left minister and head Fu were both elites at the heavenly body tier, and it was a huge surprise that Ling Han was actually able to become friendly with their forces at the same time. Even Zhao Lun started to feel a little pressure. If Shuo Yuan hadn't moved aside for material benefits, it would have been 3 heavenly body tier forces members standing up for Ling Han. However, thinking back to the fact that Ling Han potentially had a peerless inheritance, he immediately steadied his resolve again. He definitely had to snatch it. Die. He swiped his palm toward Ling Han. You go die. Ling Han roared furiously as his sword and palm both struck out in unison. He had started to counterattack. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.